When Marco Polo first went to China and saw the peony flower, he said that there were roses as big as cabbages. In this video, I'm going to show you how I paint a peony flower in its garden setting. So come with me. I've set up my sketch easel with the diffuser to give me soft light. And I'm looking here at these three ones, the open one and the two buds. The watercolor sketchbook is primed with casein, kind of yellow in the center and blue at the outside edges. This is just a arbitrary underpainting that I had on one of the pages. But it'll be fun to see how that yellow comes through in the final paint mixtures. I'm lightly penciling the layout for the flowers using a water-soluble colored pencil. When I lay washes over that will slightly dissolve, but it'll give me another bit of color. Now I'm using casein, cadmium green, cerulean blue, rose red, ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow light, raw umber, and cadmium yellow deep. That makes enough colors to paint this subject. And I'll start by mixing some greens using the blue and the yellow and a touch of the cadmium green. I'm using a large flat synthetic brush. And when I paint that over the yellow, it's not completely opaque, so some of the color underneath will show through. The first step here is to draw around or paint around the silhouette of that flower to isolate it in value. And then now I want to indicate some of that reddish or pinkish light that's trapped in between the petals. Here I have an incomplete mixture on the flat brush so that there's more pigment on one side than another. Incomplete mixtures on the brush can be very helpful because they can give you little tiny gradations in the picture. Often a picture should have big gradations from one area to another and little tiny gradations within a stroke. If you mix the paint too much, you get just flat color. Now that yellow I'm going to need to cover up because in the flower itself, those are very pale whitish colors. But I'm working my way up to white, gradually, both by mixing some tones that are a little bit darker than white, and also by mixing it with enough water that I'm not going full-on intense with opacity. If I stop short of my final accents, both my highest value and lowest value colors, and also my brightest intense colors, I can save those strong accents for the very end of the picture. There's a lot of transmitted light through the petals, so there's no real strong light and shadow the way you'd have if you were painting something that was made of plaster. So the light is traveling through all those thin forms. And I think that's one of the things that makes peonies and roses such fun to paint, because of the way the petals transmit the light through subsurface scattering into the entire interior of the flower. It keeps there from being darks anywhere in the flower, but it also concentrates the very little pale amount of color into the cavities when you're looking straight between the petals. That's where you get the strongest color. I switch now to painting the area around the flower. And I have a much bigger brush than I really need. But I like that because it forces me to think about the stroke and to try to twirl the brush at an angle where I can make a stroke that's going to give me what I want. Using this long synthetic flat, I'm darkening the area around the flower with a dark greenish color. I'm also trying to think of how I can suggest at least the shapes of those leaves that are behind the flower and around it. There are really a lot of values. There's transmitted light that's bright green, and there's bright light bouncing off the top of the leaves. But I don't want to use that full range of values in the foliage because I want to keep it all within a fairly middle to dark range. That way I can feature the lightness of the flowers. What I'm doing here is softening some edges around the flower. I don't want them all to be sharp cutouts. So in some places where the flower goes into shadow, I can soften the edge. If both edges have dried, if the background and the foreground have dried, you can reapply the paint on both sides of an edge and then blend it. With oil, that wouldn't be a problem because it would all stay wet together longer. The wind comes and goes, and as it settles down, I can study a little bit better what's going on with the individual petals. There's so many individual petals clustered around even the wide open flower that I probably can't do a portrait of each one individually. I want to show a bud that's in the process of opening. It has a round outer shape and then a kind of a cupped cluster of densely packed petals on the opening. And I'm starting to paint this now with a bright, cool red with the edge of the brush. That'll give me kind of a base that I can drop some lighter strokes into. I feel what the thing feels like. It's quite densely packed, lots of very thin petals. Here's where a severely limited palette won't serve me well. I need to have a strong chroma, cool red for this. Let's speed things up a little bit so you can watch the basic process. Putting in a variety of greens kind of randomly, some lights and darks, building the other buds in the background. As long as I have a color on the brush, I can drop it into other flowers. And then when that dries, I can go in with some darks again. Now the ants appear a lot on the flowers. Ants are attracted to peonies because they produce a nectar that's specific for ants, and the ants actually help to open the buds. So there's kind of a symbiotic relationship going on. Now that this is dried, I can use a transparent glaze to darken the edge of that bud. I can't resist spilling over the page spread and painting a couple of buds on the left-hand side, which just suggests that these flowers kind of continue on beyond the boundaries of the page that I've done their portrait on. Now I have a much finer brush, a small round brush, and I'm just dropping some very thin edges of petals. Well, now I'm on the home stretch and the light's changed a lot, so it's time to wrap up. This is neither a botanical study nor a still life nor a garden painting in the normal sense, but sort of a field portrait or a field study of a group of individual flowers. But there's no substitute for painting them in their actual growth environment and in the actual sunlight. This has just been an excerpt from a full-length video that includes a full segment of how I painted this picture, as well as 3 other paintings of a cleome, one of a daylily, and also a wild rose in a landscape setting. In this video, you'll see how to use opaque paints in a variety of different ways for painterly handling or for very careful observational detail. So to see the full video, you can go to my Gumroad page or Sellfy for direct downloads of the video, or you can get a DVD on Amazon or at Kunaki. Those links are all in the description. So come with me to paint flowers in the wild. If you enjoyed this video, there's a lot more fun stuff. You can check out my website or subscribe to my channel. Here's a video that's got more stuff like you just saw, and then a playlist if you want to sit back and enjoy. So thanks for watching.